I'm here now in Brampton, Ontario, about to go to City Hall to speak with Brampton's Mayor Patrick Brown about the reopening, not just of Brampton, but of Ontario, as well as the new hospital that Brampton will be getting as announced by the provincial government later last year. With me now is Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown. Mayor Brown, first of all, thanks obviously for having me here today at Brampton City Hall. So maybe we can start out with, obviously, the province is gradually starting to reopen. January the 31st, businesses, particularly indoor dining, was able to reopen, which was obviously, your voice was very vocal in wanting to reopen the province. Do you think the province is, reopening quick enough, and even, driving here today, seeing all of the small businesses in downtown Brampton, what's kind of been the general impact of COVID on some of those small businesses?
Well, first of all, let me say that I am so impressed with your commitment to journalism. I've been very impressed following you in the interviews you've been doing, and it gives me a lot of hope for the future of Canada when you see young people as determined as yourself. As for your question about the reopening, I want to see Brampton, Ontario, and Canada reopen. I want to see our residents back on their feet. It's been tough. It's been tough on families. It's been tough on small businesses. We look at the health consequences of COVID-19, but there's also economic consequences, and we've lost good businesses. Just in the last month, there was 2 businesses in Brampton that went under. Heart and Hustle Gym, very popular in our downtown. Aria Restaurant, a fine dining location that was beloved in our community, and they couldn't survive the lockdowns. And so I've been a voice to open up, and I continue to push for a faster reopening. And the basis for my advocacy is on the data. I get briefed every week by the hospital, by public health, and for me the data is clear. 2 weeks ago at Brampton Civic Hospital, we had 110 COVID patients. A week ago, 70. Now we have 38. The provincial government and public health said that lockdowns were necessary, restrictions were necessary to manage hospital capacity. We don't have concerns with hospital capacity right now. Our hospital capacity today is better than it was before COVID-19. So I'm ready to reopen. I want to see our small businesses flourish again. I want to see families in my community be able to enjoy the amenities that we have. It's time to put COVID-19 in the rearview mirror.
You mentioned, just when I got here, that you had came back from a small business opening event. What has been kind of the general message of, small businesses who have opened during, COVID, and how can you make sure that, these businesses are opening during an unprecedented time? How can you make sure that they have the supports that they need to get out of it?
Well, it takes a lot of courage to open a small business, and I applaud anyone with that drive and determination, and I think we should support them. It's been a tough go, and so I really think that as we reopen, we should all get out there and support our favorite small businesses. Just go to our favorite restaurants. They've shown incredible tenacity over the last 18 months, and I, for one, believe we need to get out there, reopen, and show our support for small businesses that are the heartblood of our local economy.
In terms of, again, small businesses reopening, it's been obviously the last 2 years, and throughout COVID has been a fairly divisive time with, vaccinations. Even today, for example, at, Queen's Park, there's people protesting mandatory vaccinations, and specifically, I believe it's the truck driver vaccination mandates. What are you doing in, your role as mayor to try and unite particularly the city of Brampton in what's been a challenging time?
So we've taken a very different approach in the Region Appeal, and we've gone about it quietly, but I believe it's the right balance. I have encouraged vaccinations. I believe in science. I believe in vaccines. And we have an incredibly impressive vaccination rate amongst our employees in the city of Brampton and the Region Appeal. But we didn't do that by forcing people to get vaccines. We armed them with all the data possible. We armed them with public health information about how vaccines can save lives. But no one lost their job. No police officer, no firefighter, no paramedic, no city transit worker. No one lost their job because they chose not to get vaccinated. We did it in a collaborative approach. We made sure that everyone knew that we were in it together. We armed each other with education, and we respected people's decisions.
In regards to Brampton Civic Hospital, obviously that's one of the major hospitals in Brampton. How can you make sure that Brampton has, all the correct infrastructure in order to make sure that they're ready for, future pandemics? So that way, we don't have a situation not just in Brampton but across the province that we had kind of at the beginning of COVID.
Well, great question. And our hospital capacity has been very fragile, nowhere more so than the city of Brampton. Canada went into this pandemic with 91% of our hospital beds in use. And so it was very easy for us to be overwhelmed. You look at the US, I think it was 63 to 64% of their hospital beds that were in use. And so given the fact our governments were resorting to lockdowns when we were near capacity, having a hospital system that began the pandemic near capacity showed the weakness of our ability to have a successful pandemic response. And we do need to look at making sure we've got better capacity. Thanks to the Ford government, we're getting a new hospital built in Brampton. It's going to be a $1 billion hospital, and construction starts next year. That's going to help us locally. But I really believe we need to have a conversation nationally and provincially about making sure we've got the acute care capacity to handle a challenge like this. This may not be the only time that we face a pandemic, and I don't want to see the natural reaction always to be lockdowns, lockdowns, lockdowns. We need to build better acute care capacity. We don't need to do everything in the hospital. There's a lot of work that is done inside the hospital that can be done outside the hospital. So how do we create more space, more capacity, more agility inside our healthcare system?
And for people watching, the announcement that a new hospital was coming to Brampton from the Ford government was, a fairly big announcement. Obviously, you mentioned construction is starting next year, but when, will this new hospital actually be able to, have patients in the ICU and basically allow people in Brampton to use it?
Well, the initial forecast is you could see a 5-year construction period, but this is wonderful news. It's $1 billion investment, $1 billion with a B. Brampton was ignored for 15 years when it comes to healthcare, and it's great that we're seeing a step in the right direction. Now, will we need additional investments? Absolutely, but it's a significant step in the right direction.
Okay, and going back to kind of the, small business part of this, obviously you have a lot to do in your role as mayor, but just throughout COVID, obviously it's required to work to, work with the provincial government, and then some of, your other mayoral colleagues in Mississauga, Toronto. How has, working with other levels of government reflected Brampton's approach to dealing with COVID?
Well, I've always been a big believer of collaboration, working with everyone to serve our residents. It doesn't matter what political perspective someone comes from. At the end of the day, we have to serve the same residents. And so whether it's the Liberals in Ottawa, the Conservatives at Queen's Park, we all have to work together. We report to the same residents, and we need to find solutions through creativity and collaboration. And so there's been a high level of collaboration during the pandemic. I would also note amongst mayors there's been a high level of collaboration. I'm on a weekly call that John Tory hosts with mayors across the GTA. And at the end of the day, when you face a challenge, teamwork can help you overcome it.
Teamwork can help you overcome it is something obviously you just said. How has, the approach at Brampton City Hall with some of the city councillors, how have you worked right here in Brampton with, the regional councillors and some of the city councillors?
So, I'm a big fan of the Bill Davis approach, and that is you find solutions and you work together. And I'm proud of the City Council. We faced some tough issues where we were divided, but we came together in the end. We've now passed all 4 budgets unanimously. We passed our transit plan unanimously, and just yesterday we picked a city manager unanimously. And so it speaks to our ability to take a difficult issue and come together with a common solution.
How can you continue some of that, unanimous support for various pieces of legislation on other issues besides for COVID and as we exit COVID?
Well, I think it's about listening. Sometimes our politics can be so divided, and I think it's important to listen to each other's perspectives, because I'm a big believer that Canadians have more in common than we have that separate us. And I see that in Brampton. I've seen that in my service in Simcoe County. We have more in common than what separates us.
Okay, and then one final question. We're, looking at your next year as mayor. What are some of the biggest things that, you're looking to achieve as you enter your next year as mayor?
Well, we got a major project with Rogers in our downtown to have a massive tech investment, $100 million in our downtown. I want to see that project get off its feet. We're hoping to expand our LRT into the downtown to have connectivity with our rapid bus transit. I want to see that hospital project get off the ground with no hiccups. I'm working with the provincial government on creating a med school. And at the same time, we are in the midst of transforming our entire transit fleet to be electrified. We're going to be the first big city in Canada with a fully electrified transit fleet, clean, green, and efficient.
All right, Mayor Brown, thanks so much for your time, and it's been great chatting with you.
My honor.